Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ronin's Den. I'm Steve. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Eric. And today we are doing another Fabula Ultima video. We are going to be reviewing and going over the Arcanist class. This class is basically trying to fulfill that summoner, uh, the summoner that you would find in the Final Fantasies or stuff like that. It's not exactly that, but you'll see what we mean as we get a little into this.
Yeah, so
But
so the Arcanist in Fabula Ultima is also known as the Avatar, the Chosen, or the Summoner. They do function a little bit differently from your classic summoners in Final Fantasy, where they call the monster out and it does something and then disappears or stays with the party and fights with it. In Fabula Ultima, they're more of a enhancement for the character. The Arcanist will merge with the Arcanum, which is the entity that they summon. All Fabula Ultima classes are built kind of the same way in the book. You'll see some free benefits that you get, a permanent increase of mind points by 5 in this case, and then you get a handful of skills that you can level up as you gain character levels with the Arcanist. The most important one, in my opinion, is Bind and Summon, because this is what's going to let you summon and bind Arcanums.
if you look at all the other abilities on the page right now, all but one of them deal with your Arcana or your merged Arcana. Arcane Circle does something with the Arcana. So if you do not take Bind and Summon, you're basically useless with this class. It is probably the most important part, and I recommend taking it first.
Yeah, so let's break down these skills. So the way it works is you get the skill name, and you have this little star and a number. That tells you how many times you can level that skill up. So Arcane Circle, you can get up to 4 skill levels in it, which you'll see throughout the entries is SL. And a lot of skills have some kind of bonus that's based on skill level multiplied by a number. So in this case with Arcane Circle, after you willingly dismiss an Arcanum on your turn during a conflict, if that Arcanum had not been summoned during the same turn that and you have an arcane weapon equipped, you may immediately perform the spell action for free. So you can dismiss your Arcanum, get the benefit from that, then you can immediately cast a spell. The spell that you cast in this way must have a total mind point cost of skill level times 5 or lower. You must still pay the spell's MP cost. So what that would mean would be you could dismiss an Arcanum if you have skill level 2 in this. 2 times 5 would be 10. So you could cast a spell that has a total cost of 10 magic points for free immediately.
And a quick reminder that in Fabula Ultima, you don't start with just one class. You can start with up to 3. And since the Arcanist doesn't naturally have spells, this would encourage you to pick something like the Chimerist or the Entropist or one of the other classes that we will cover in the future. So keep that in mind when you're building your character, because this class synergizes with a spellcaster type class because it allows you to cast a spell for free after dismissing your Arcana.
Yep, and I'm actually playing a character in our Saturday game who has levels in Arcanist and levels in Entropist. And a couple of the skills I'm looking at getting over time are going to be Arcane Circle, and then the next one, which is Arcane Regeneration. This one lets you recover hit points immediately when you summon an Arcanum. That equals to skill level times 5. So you can take 2 ranks in this. You can recover up to 10 hit points just by summoning an Arcanum. We already talked about binding.
That's
summon.
actually really good.
It is really good.
I mean, hit points are, in the combats that we've had, being able to recover 10 hit points just for using an ability is really strong. Like, we've found out in our few combats that health regeneration is kind of important.
Yeah, it plays a lot different than your standard D&D where you do have to cast healing spells, but there's really no difference between 1 and full hit points. In Fabula, you got to be healing.
Yeah. So, as you were saying, bind and summon. You may bind arcana to your soul and summon them later. The game master will tell you the details of each binding process when you first encounter the arcanum in question. You may use an action and spend 40 mind points to summon an arcanum that you have bound. The details of this process are explained on the next page. If you take this skill at character creation, you begin play with one arcanum of your choice already bound to you. Choose from the list on the next pages. Other than that, you may only obtain new arcanum through exploration and story progress. So as I stated, this is very important if you are going for this summoner build to take bind and summon level 1. Like right when you're creating, this should be the first thing you take, because you get an arcanum for free and it basically sets the tone for your build. If you take this later, you have to do something to get an arcana. In our game, Eric here got lucky that they befriended an ancient entity that was willing to give a piece of himself to Duality, or to Eric, to be able to bind and summon that. It was a willing contract, not a forced contract. So there are ways that the game master can make it flavorful and fun. This is a very thematic class, yet still kind of fun and mechanical at the same time.
Yeah, the players that choose Arcanist, you're gonna want to work with your storyteller to find new arcanums to get for you. Otherwise, it's not something that you're just gonna get naturally just from being able to select skills. You know, I saw that we made friends with this water elemental, and I'm like, hey, this is a good opportunity. I don't know what's going to happen with the whole binding and all that. Am I going to have to do some sort of combat with it, perform a quest for it, or if it's just going to say, yeah, this sounds like a good deal, let's go. But
in our game, the players actually did something that was beneficial to strengthen this water elemental, this king of the water elementals. So by doing that, they gained his favor, and as a return for that favor, he gave a piece of himself away. This is something that you can do, and like Eric said, work with your game master to make these fun and interesting. These can be hugely story impactful, or they can be just handed to you, which I don't think is a good thing to do, but regardless.
yeah. So the next skill, Emergency Arcanum. This is one of those skills that works with Crisis. Crisis is when you're at half hit points. We'll cover Crisis in another video in detail. But when you have this skill, the cost for summoning your Arcanum is reduced by skill level times 5 mind points. Now, this is where you'll start seeing classes synergize with themselves and with other classes. Because what you could do is if you have, say, levels in Darkblade, you want to get to Crisis because you have extra benefits for being there. But then let's say you want to regenerate those hit points. So now you can do a Summon Arcanum. You get Emergency Summoning. So the cost to cast it is reduced. 40 mind points is a lot of mind points. My character is 55 right now. That's a lot.
And 40 is how much it costs exactly to summon it. So if you max this out, 6 times 5, that's 30.
35.
But
30, yeah.
35. No, it's 30. Yeah.
It's 30.
6 times 5 is 30. So you're basically getting a 75% discount to summon it if you just wait to be in Crisis.
And you're also, by synergizing with Arcane Regeneration, gaining 10 hit points back if you've taken those 2 skill levels. So you're getting some bonuses here. Things to think about when you are creating your character and what skills you're taking and what order you're taking them with. And then the last skill, Ritual Arcanism. We're going to have to do a whole video on rituals, to be honest.
Yeah, I personally think that is one of the most confusing things in Fabula, so it deserves its own video. But essentially, for anything that is not covered in spells or abilities, you've got rituals. So this one allows you to use Arcanum, or rituals of the Arcanism discipline, as long as their effects fall within that domain, of one or more arcana you have bound, you can do them. So there is a little bit of funkiness there. We're going to have to do our own dedicated video for rituals. But this is actually a pretty good skill. Rituals can be incredibly powerful if you are creative. So there's a lot you can do there, but we'll cover that eventually elsewhere.
Yeah.
And this is the only skill out of those skills that we just went through that does not require you to actually have bind and summon.
Actually,
But it does because it has to go with your arcana. So back to that statement, bind and summon is the most important thing for the Arcanist. If you're looking at everything on here and you don't want bind and summon, you should probably pick a different class because nothing is beneficial to you if you don't take bind and summon.
Yep. Now, the last thing we'll cover here is what merging and dismissing, what that looks like. So when you first do your summoning of an Arcanum, you're going to get some kind of merge benefit. I put up a couple examples of Arcanums on the screen, and you'll see on the top part the name of the Arcanum, in this case, Arcanum of the Forge, what its domains are: heat, metal, fire. These are the things that you would be able to influence with that ritualism with Arcanums skill. If this was the only Arcanum you had, all your rituals would have to deal with heat, metal, or fire in some way. Now, kind of a carve out when it comes to rituals. These can't be used to do direct damage. Like, you can't do a ritual and create a fireball and throw at people. But again, we'll cover rituals in another video. The next part down is your merge.
But say like a building is on fire. You want to put it out. You decide you're going to use an arcanism ritual with your fire domain to try to quell that fire. That is something you could do with rituals.
Yep.
But as you were saying with the merge abilities, it gives you benefits. So basically, you're basically summoning this entity, this arcana, and you're merging with it, and it is giving you a temporary benefit. So the one of the Forge, you have resistance to fire damage, and any fire damage you deal ignores resistances. That is huge. Yeah. Ignoring resistances in this game is very important, as we've learned in our campaign so far. Welcome to Capiterra. So those are the benefits you get, and every Arcana is going to give you a little bit of different benefits. And then you have the dismissal effects.
So when you dismiss the Forge Arcanum, for instance, you can either choose to Forge or to use Inferno. With Forge, you can create a basic armor, shield, or weapon. And if you use this option, that item stays with you until you use this ability again. And it'll deal fire damage instead of physical damage. So if you use Arcanum of the Forge to get your fire resistance in battle, and then you could say, all right, I'm going to dismiss this, and I'm choosing Forge. I need a sword, so I'm going to create a sword. You create a flaming sword, it does fire damage. This thing stays with you permanently now until you use that ability again. Or you could choose Inferno, which is just a straight 30 damage to everything on the field, ignoring resistances. And with resistance in Fabula Ultima, that means they take half damage. With this, they are going to take the full damage.
Which, like I said, is huge in this game. In our last episode of Welcome to Capiterra, one of our players had only dark damage. He didn't realize that he ignored resistance. So all of his attacks were doing basically nothing to the creature they were fighting. But if he had the ability to ignore those resistances, it would have been a lot better for him, which he did have the ability, but he didn't realize it, and neither did any of us. So we'll have to remember that going forward.
And one last thing about these Arcanums before we wrap up. These are just guidelines for what you could be using. This isn't supposed to be the definitive list. These are just jumping off points and ideas for, what you could have in your game. The storytellers and players are encouraged, just like every other part of the game, through session 0 with creating the world, to create the arcanums themselves, what domains they cover, what their merge effects are, what their dismissal effects are. You could use them raw, rules is written out of the book, but they highly encourage you to go ahead and create your own for the system.
Yeah, and they're very easy to make. If you look at all of these sample ones they have, you kind of get an idea of what they are doing with them and where the power scale is. They kind of give you resistance to a damage. They give you the ability to ignore resistances, and then they give you some kind of ultimate ability, like a burst or some other type of beneficial thing. Like I believe the one for warp allows you to teleport you and your party up to a day away to a place familiar to you. There's a lot of creative things you can do here. And I think one last thing I want to bring up before we do end the video, Eric and I didn't talk about it. Heroic skills are advanced skills you can take with a class. So when you reach your 10th level in the class, meaning you've picked 9 skill levels of something, when you go to your 10th skill level, you can pick a heroic skill. One of the heroic skills in I believe it's the high fantasy book, or maybe the techno fantasy.
It's high fantasy.
High fantasy gives you the ability to actually summon your arcana and make it a creature that will fight for you. So we said it wasn't like a traditional summon, but there are multiple heroic skills that are specifically for the arcana that make them a summon. Some of them buff them. Some of them give them a stronger dismissal. There's a lot of creativity here when you max out a class as well. And I just thought that was something that we should mention for anyone who's thinking, well, I was really looking for something more of a summon. You can get there if you work at it and put all of your levels into this class.
Yep. And we'll cover heroic skills in little YouTube shorts in the future as well. But that's all I got on the Arcanist. It's a class that I've incorporated into my current running character. I love what it can do. I'm excited to see just how far I can stretch this character out as time goes on. I think I'm going to be going for that Grand Summon heroic skill myself. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Honestly, if you like the idea of having an extra planar entity that's just an ally to you that you can summon, you can chat with, like there's a lot you can do story-wise with this class. It's a lot of fun. I think it's one of the better classes out there, not to say the others are bad, but this is one of my favorites in the entire book. There's just so much story implication and so many things you can do with it. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend people to try it out. If you have not tried Fabula Ultima yet, it is a lot of fun. It is one of those systems that you can do a lot with, and you really have that character creation customization that a lot of TTRPGs lack. So the Arcanist is a great starting point for that if you want to try some funky things.
Absolutely. So keep checking back with us every week. We're going to be doing something Fabula Ultima related this year. Next week, we got our next episode of Welcome to Capiterra. We just dealt with that raptor attack, and we're going to be moving forward with our journey for the other 3 elemental lords, I believe, is the game plan. And then on those off weeks, we'll be doing videos like this where we'll be breaking down the rules of Fabula Ultima and deep diving into the classes as they're written. So until next time.
If you have any suggestions for stuff you would like us to do Fabula Ultima related, leave them in the comments below. It would mean a lot to us.
Absolutely. And if you could smash that like and subscribe button, it really helps us out getting the visibility and getting this game the visibility it deserves, because this is a fun game. It really is. All right, everybody. That's me, Duality, Eric for Ronin's Den, here with my partner Steve, and it's been a blast. Catch you next week for Welcome to Capiterra.